We're going to be celebrating New Year's on a plane. I can't think of a better way to celebrate it, to be honest. Especially when you're leaving behind weather like this. Just to give you a brief introduction to this video, I'm Ollie and this is Turner's Workshop. And in this video, I'm going to be documenting my trip to Vietnam. This was my first ever solo backpacking trip, and for the first 2 weeks I booked onto a tour through a company called G Adventures. And then in the third week I went off and did my own thing in the north of Vietnam because there were certain things I still wanted to do that weren't on the itinerary for the tour. So I hope you find this video useful and it gives you some tips and ideas for traveling Vietnam. And if you do enjoy the video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. After a 6-hour flight, I arrived at Doha International Airport. This has got to be the nicest airport I've ever been to. I had a 2-hour layover here, and it took me about an hour to get from one side of the airport to the other. The next flight was around 7 hours, and I celebrated New Year's in the air, with a few Budweisers and a questionable chicken sausage. The queues in Saigon airport were very long. It took me about an hour to get through immigration. And you can visit Vietnam without a visa for up to 45 days for tourism or business. After arriving at the hotel, I had a quick power nap, and then later on that evening I met the rest of the group that we'd be travelling with for the next 2 weeks. We also met our CEO, our Chief Experience Officer, and he took us out for our welcome moment, where we had a few drinks and got to know each other a bit better. The following day I'd booked to go and see the Cu Chi tunnels. This was an optional extra not included in the tour. And the guy leading our group actually lived through the war, so he had a story or two to tell.
Tyler.
And then on top, a lot of dry leaf on top for camouflage.
And then it was my turn to squeeze into one of these tunnels, and I can confirm they are very tight. They were used by the Viet Cong soldiers during the war for hiding and for transporting supplies from one place to another. After the Cu Chi tunnels, we got the bus back to Ho Chi Minh City, where we spent the afternoon into the evening exploring. Luxury toilet on a night train in Vietnam. Pneumatic flush. Pretty cool. There's no need to worry about oversleeping on the overnight train because you'll get this wake up alarm just before the last stop, and there is no sleeping through this one. The overnight train had taken us from Ho Chi Minh City up to Nha Trang. It was too early to check into our hostel, so we checked out the beach instead, and then we got some food. Now, I tried many banh mi's while I was in Vietnam. It's basically a baguette with meat and various vegetables in it. It's really, really tasty. And this was a particularly good one, so check it out if you're in the Nha Trang area. Later on that day we decided to rent some mopeds and go and visit a waterfall. This wasn't part of the trip itinerary, we just added it on in the free time. There There are two options to get up to the top main waterfall. You can either walk up the nice path which runs alongside this river, or you can walk through the river itself up to the top. If you do plan on wading through the river, make sure you bring a waterproof bag to put your passport and valuables in, as I found this out the hard way. Once you've reached the top waterfall, you can do a bit of cliff jumping if that's your thing, or maybe just go for a swim. Our pillion passengers had never ridden a motorbike before, so it was only fair to let them have a go. And can I say they did a great job, much better than many of the tourists that get on a moped when they go to Asia.
You want to go again? No.
We finished off that evening with a stroll through the night market, and then the following day we got a grab taxi to take a hike up the mountains. I think the girls had had enough of us at this point, so it was just a group of lads out on a hike. What started off as a windy, overcast day turned into a lovely sunny afternoon. So later on that day, a couple of us ran back from the hike, and then we went up to this rooftop pool, which is called Sky Blue in Nha Trang, and it's got 360-degree views of the city. Just check this out. They've got a restaurant and a bar up there, and one of the coolest features about this pool is it's got an overhanging part with a glass bottom, so when you swim under the water you can look down and see the city below you. I don't want to put any ideas in your head, but it's a bit unnerving when you look at how that glass is bonded in. We can only hope that that mastic's strong enough. With our time in Nha Trang coming to an end, we stopped by the local banh mi place to pick one up for the train journey. They're around 45,000 dong for a special one, and it was very special, I have to say, and that was the equivalent to about £1.50 in the UK. And of course you've got to get some beers for the train journey as well, and they're around 50p each for a 330ml can, so we stocked up on plenty of those. This train was in a much better condition than the last one, so let me take you for a little wander and show you the toilet situation. Toilets are a bit nicer in this one. This was a very long train. There were many carriages. So many that I nearly got lost. Somewhere around here. Next one. Is this it? There it is. How you doing? It even had a little restaurant carriage, which was quite nice if you get a bit peckish in the night. This overnight train took us all the way from Nha Trang up to Hoi An, and when we arrived I tried an egg coffee. I'm not a big fan of coffee, but this was very nice. I also had this healthy smoothie bowl to try and counteract some of the beers I'd been drinking. The trip had been quite full on up until this point, so after checking into the hotel I spent a bit of time relaxing by the pool. Later on that day we had our optional activity, which was a bicycle tour around Hoi An, and that was very entertaining to say the least. I think some of us were still a little bit tipsy. Our first stop was to visit Mr. Fu, who makes tofu, and he showed us how to make it, and then we got the chance to try some and have a go at making it ourselves. Say tofu! We then stopped at this farm where they showed us how they look after the crops, and this was a perfect opportunity for another family photo. We then went for a basket boat ride, and what a laugh that was. And we finished off that day with a sunset river cruise. Just when you think this place can't get any more beautiful, you walk down to the riverside at night time. Then you know about it. For dinner we went to this all-you-can-eat Vietnamese restaurant. It's a great way to try out loads of different Vietnamese dishes, and it only costs £15 per person. So if you're in the Hoi An area, definitely check out this one because the food was fantastic. The following day we had our Oodles of Noodles cooking class, which is included with the G Adventures package. It was quite interesting. They showed us how to make noodles and then we had a chance to make them ourselves. Lunch was included as part of the activity, and that was really nice. It was a shrimp pho dish. With our time in Hoi An coming to an end, I spent the rest of the day exploring the town. Some of us went off to pick up our tailor-made clothes. This is the ideal place to get anything tailor-made because it's very cheap and they have a very quick turnaround. So make sure you get it ordered when you arrive and then you can pick it up in a couple of days. It took around 5 hours to get from Hoi An up to Hue, and then once we arrived we checked into the hostel, had some food, and then it was time to go on our motorbike tour, which was pre-booked through G Adventures. With farming being such a big part of Vietnamese culture, we went to this museum about the agricultural history of Vietnam, and this is one of the methods they used to water the rice fields back in the day. This is a traditional method used for sorting out the rice grain after harvest.
And the kitty, you know this is a raincoat. A raincoat. My palmlet. Then they put the tan through the hole here, see? And wrap fresh in here. Wrap fresh in here. See? Oh, I cannot do that. Yeah. You see the bucket longer than my arm.
This is one of the viewpoints in Hue, looking over the Perfume River. In the autumn time, fragrant flowers from orchards upriver fall into the water, giving it a perfume-like aroma, hence the name Perfume River. This is known as the Incense Village in Hue. You can see these bunches of really brightly coloured bamboo sticks. Each colour corresponds to a different smell, so yellow is for lemongrass. A mixture of sawdust, glue and lemongrass is then applied to the bamboo sticks. It's dried out in the sunshine and then you can burn it as incense. This is the Hue Tiger Arena. It's got quite an interesting history. It was originally used to train elephants for fighting, so they would be used like tanks during battles, and then they would hold an annual tiger versus elephant fight here, and it would be a fight till death. The tigers were at a bit of a disadvantage though, because they were kept in these small holding cells weeks, even months before the fight, so that they would grow weak. You can see the claw marks in these cells where they'd obviously tried to get out. Don't worry, this doesn't still happen. The last fight here was in 1904 under the reign of Fan Thai Emperor, and now it's just used as a tourist attraction. They may have left the best stop till last, and that was visiting this lovely temple. I'll try and pronounce it. It's Thien Mu Temple, which means Temple of the Celestial Lady. Beep, 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 beep. We arrived back after the motorbike tour and went out for dinner with the rest of the group, and then I got some well needed rest because I was absolutely exhausted. For our last day in Hue, we went to go and visit this abandoned water park. A bit of interesting history about this water park. So it opened in 2004 but then closed a few months later due to financial difficulties. The water park was built on a former burial ground, and it cost $3 million to build this site. The main feature here is the dragon sculpture, which you can walk around, and if you continue going around the lake you'll come across the water slides going into an abandoned swimming pool that had a lazy river. It also had an aquarium and an amphitheatre. It's eerily quiet as you walk around, almost like a graveyard. Now, I'm not too superstitious, however, I would say this place is probably cursed, and perhaps that's why the business failed. You shouldn't be building where the dead are buried. That's just disrespectful if you ask me. Later that afternoon we went to this tomb and temple complex. This is the mausoleum of Emperor Tu Duc. I think that's how you say it. And although the tombs and temples are very interesting and beautiful, for me the highlight had to be the koi pond.
Alright, we ready?
Yep.
They're gonna go mental.
And with that, our time in Hue had come to an end. We got back to our hostel where the coach was waiting for us to take us to the next destination. We arrived in Phong Nha about 5 hours later, and then we went for dinner. For starters, I had a chicken foot, didn't really have much meat on it. And then for mains, I had this beef in black bean sauce, and it was really tasty. One of the nicest dishes I had the whole trip. The weather was a little bit miserable in Phong Nha, however that wouldn't really affect us as we were exploring caves this day. Phong Nha is well known for its caving experiences, and it's got some of the largest caves in the world. Once you get inside the cave, they turn the engine off and switch to rowing power, and then you get to appreciate just how vast and spectacular this cave is. It's a really magical experience rowing down one of the longest underground rivers in the world. You then get a chance to get off and have a walk around, look at the stalactite and stalagmite formations, which have been forming for hundreds of thousands of years. I then closed my eyes as this lady prepared a coconut for me. And then it was almost time to move on to our next destination, which was Halong Bay. So we got the overnight train from Phong Nha up to Hanoi, and then from Hanoi we got a bus to Halong Bay. So this was the start of the Halong Bay cruise, which was included with the G Adventures tour. It was a little bit of an overcast day, so you had to imagine what it would be like on a nice beautiful sunny day with the limestone islands and the emerald green waters. It wasn't really like that, however it was very beautiful all the same. Now I know you're probably all caved out from Phong Nha, but we did stop at this cave, and it wasn't a cave to be taken for granted. After the caves we got back on board our boat and had a lovely lunch, which was included with the cruise, and then afterwards we stopped off to do a bit of kayaking.
Trying to get you in.
The boat started moving away while my drone was in the air, so I had to make an emergency landing. Oh, and by the way, has anyone lost their dad? Get yourself to a shady Vietnamese massage parlour.
Thank you.
The following day we got the bus back to Hanoi, where we'd be spending our last day together as a full group. So we didn't waste any time. After check-in we went straight to the train street. Now there are a couple of train streets in Hanoi. This is the main one and it gets very busy, so if you want front row seats make sure you get there nice and early. Everyone was so happy to see the train and it was a great atmosphere, so I had to go and check out the other train street and it got even closer. For our last meal together we went to this Michelin star restaurant called Tam V. The food was absolutely amazing, as you would expect from a Michelin star restaurant, and when you compare the prices to what you'd pay back home, it's actually very good value for money. And with our stomachs nicely lined we then went out to enjoy the bars in Hanoi and get a little bit tipsy for our last night together. We had a great last night out, and then the following day, sadly, it was time to part ways. After a banh mi, of course. I continued my journey up north to Ha Giang, where I'd be doing a 3-day 2-night Ha Giang Loop tour, and I'd booked it through a company called Jasmine Tours. They had these really comfortable VIP buses, which took you from Hanoi up to the starting point in Ha Giang. There are two options when you book the Ha Giang Loop. You can either pay a little bit more and have an easy rider. This is where you have your own dedicated driver who will take you from place to place. Or you can do a self-ride, which is just basically renting the bike out and navigating the loop at your own pace. For those of you that follow the channel, you'll know I've got my own motorbike and I'm quite into that kind of thing. But I actually chose to do the easy rider, and I'll explain why a bit later on in the video. Yep, that is a cage full of piglets on the back of a motorbike, and believe it or not, I actually saw a fully grown adult pig strapped to the back of a motorbike. It was live, wriggling around. I honestly couldn't believe what I was seeing. Most of the first day was spent riding up into the mountains, and the views just got better and better. And then we stopped off and went for a hike up into the mountains, and you'll never guess what was at the top. The road to and from the hike was so bumpy, honestly I was holding on for dear life. It felt like a full body workout, just trying to keep myself planted on the seat. So you may be wondering why I didn't do the self ride and I chose an easy rider. Well, there were a few reasons for this. The first one being I wanted to record the footage so you guys could come along and enjoy the ride too. Secondly, I don't have an international driving license, and when you do get stopped at the police checkpoints you will be expected to pay a fine. And the third and probably main reason is because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of drinking. Jasmine Tours is known as the party tour, so to avoid driving either drunk or hungover, I think I made the best decision. We stayed in a mixed dorm with around 12 beds. It even had heating, which was nice for this time of year because it actually gets very cold in the north. After dinner it was time to get the party started, so that meant a few shots of happy water. It's also known as corn wine and it's a big part of Vietnamese culture. The tour continued the following day. The first stop was Tham Ma Pass viewpoint, and it's absolutely stunning. You've got this meandering road going all the way up through the mountains. Make sure you carry some sweets in your pockets as the locals won't leave you alone otherwise. If you're feeling brave you can do the skywalk. It's basically this piece of rock which hangs off of the edge of the mountain. Ideal for getting those crazy Instagram photos. This little boat trip was included in the tour and it was a nice add-on, something you probably wouldn't get if you were doing the self-rider. They took us up through the mountains on the river and the water was just so turquoise in areas where the light was reflecting back off of the limestone cliffs. We stopped off at this little beach area and it was the ideal opportunity just to be present and to take a moment to appreciate just how beautiful Vietnam is. It seems that while we were enjoying our relaxing cruise, our easy riders were preparing for a race, which was fine by me. If you're planning on visiting the north of Vietnam, make sure Ha Giang Loop's on your itinerary. It's honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had. It was an easy way to make new friends, the food was great, the happy water was even better, the easy riders were lovely people and they were really experienced riders. I actually felt very safe on the back of the bike with them. And I think it goes without saying that the scenery was absolutely phenomenal. But you know how the song goes, all good things come to an end, and unfortunately it was time to say goodbye to my newfound friends. The sightseeing continued on the sleeper bus back to Hanoi, and this bus was really luxury. It even had massage beds, which was really nice after being on the back of a motorbike for 3 days. So I got some well needed rest. If you follow the channel, you'll know I recently built a pottery wheel. So while I was in Hanoi, I actually booked to do a traditional pottery class. I had hoped to meet some people there with a similar interest, However, it turns out it was just me that had booked the class this day. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity to have a one-to-one session. If you plan on going to a pottery class and you want to take your pieces home with you though, make sure you give yourself a few days because they have to be sent off to be glazed and fired. For my last day in Vietnam, I went to Hanoi prison. I found it quite horrifying listening to some of the inmates' accounts. This room would have been filled with people and there was a toilet up one end that rarely got emptied, so that would just spill out into the room and disease was rife. This was one of the solitary confinement cells. In the prison's history, a few of the inmates did manage to escape through the sewer system. The courtyard is now a memorial site for all of the people who suffered these awful conditions, and many of them unfortunately died here. I wanted to go somewhere a bit special for my last supper in Hanoi, so I went to this Bun Cha restaurant. The food tasted absolutely exceptional, and what makes it even more special is that Obama even ate at this restaurant in 2016. And with that, my time in Vietnam had come to an end. 3 weeks of jam-packed, fun-filled adventure. When I first set out on this solo backpacking trip, I thought it'd be quite a lonely experience. However, it was quite the opposite, and I made some really good friends. So a big shout out to everybody I met along the way who made this experience so very special. It was an absolute pleasure meeting you all, and I do hope our paths cross again someday. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. If you click that little alarm bell, you'll get notifications when I post new videos. I've put a link in the description below to the G Adventures tour that I booked onto. They've got hundreds of different tours, so check it out. And until next time, wishing you all safe travels, take care and bye for now.